Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. Our lab exercise 3 is input validation. So for lab exercise 3, we will continue from our project which we have actually completed in lab exercise 2. So okay, now what we are going to do now is that we are going to actually incorporate some aspects of input validation using input validator controls that you can find in ASP.NET. Okay, now for the purpose of this, the first thing that we need to do is that we need to make some changes to our web config. Okay, so let us open the web config. Okay, now this is web config. Okay, so in general, so if you are using the older version, which is version 2012, version 2013, so basically you do not need to make this change. But if you are using Visual Studio version 2015, 17 or version 19, okay, so you need to add some aspects of the web config. Okay, now the first thing that you need to do, if this is I'm using version Visual Studio 2019, okay, the first thing that you must do is that in the configuration, okay, now this is the configuration text. Okay, now in between this, you need to add another XML tag, which is app settings. Okay, you can find, okay, when you type in partially, you can see the first one, this is app settings. Now choose this app settings. Okay, okay, now within the app settings tag, you need to add, so this is add, and you need to add a key. Okay, now this key is related to the validation setting. Okay, so key equals, so type in validation settings. Okay, you see settings is with a plural. Okay, this is a plural, validation settings. We have colon, unobtrusive validation mode. So we have unobtrusive validation. Okay, validation mode, and the value equals to none. Okay, so this is one aspect that you need to actually add. Okay, and save the changes to the web config. Okay, now you can close the web config. Okay, next, okay, let us go to our input validation. Now, for the purpose of testing our input validation, we will add a button. Okay, now this button is for the purpose of postback, so that we can actually check the input validation without having the method to actually calculate anything. Okay, so what we are going to do now is that we go to our toolbox. Okay, now this is the toolbox. Okay, where is the toolbox? Okay, go to the standard toolbox. Now what you need to do is just go to the button, and we can actually just drag and drop the button anywhere. Okay, now the button is no need to actually format or anything, and no need to actually add any method, so because this is just for the purpose of postback. Okay, now I'm dragging this here, so no changes to the button. Okay, now this is, you have button, this is button 1. Okay, doesn't matter. Okay, now this is the first thing that we do. Okay, now as for the input validation, okay, let me actually collapse the standard toolbox. Okay, you can find from the toolbox validation. Okay, now there are several types of validation within Visual Studio. Now, there are, however, I will not cover everything. So I will cover several, such as compare validator, range validator, required field validator, and also validation summary. Now, first thing that what we are going to do now is that we are going to use what we call required field validator. So now required field validator is used when we want to ensure that input control such as text box, we make it compulsory for the user to enter some form of data. Okay, so if the user does not enter the data, so it will display some form of reminder or error message. Now, let us actually focus on the first one. We have quiz. Okay, now this text box, and I'm going to actually display the error message somewhere next to the text box. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going for required field validator. I'm going to drag and drop here next to the quiz text box. Now this is required field validator. Okay, if I am to go to the source, okay, this is the source. Okay, I'm going to actually hide this toolbox so that we can have a better view of things. Okay, you will find that there is, this is ASP required field validator. So this is the class. Okay, by default it will give the name ID required field validator 1. Okay, so here I'm going to actually because this is quite long, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to rename this required field validator 1, okay, the ID to something shorter. For example, RFV, representing required field validator. Now this is for the text box quiz, so I'm going to put in quiz. So this is the ID. Now for the error message, okay, now there are two ways of doing typing error message. First is we have here, so this is the error message. Another is we can type in between here. Okay, now for the purpose of our application, so we are going to use both. Okay, now this one is going to be displayed as later on in the validation summary, so mean that, and this one is going to be displayed immediately next to the text box. Okay, let's say that I'm going to actually put in the summary later on. So the error message here is let's say I'll put this as quiz. Okay. So quiz not entered. Okay, quiz not entered. Okay, so and basically the and here I'm going to put in please enter the marks. Okay, please enter the mark. Okay, please enter the mark. Okay, now here, okay, now this is quite long, so I can actually enter this so that we can see this better. Okay, now this is okay, this is required field validator. So now the next thing that we are going to do is that, okay, we need to actually assign this particular control to this particular text box. Okay, so what we are going to do now is that we can actually use the properties boxes within the solution explorer on the right. So the first thing that we are going to do is that we have this particular property control to validate. We can choose what property to link, what control to link to this particular validation control. Now let's say this is TXT quiz, and you will notice that it will add control to validate equals TXT quiz here. So either you can use the property box within the solution explorer here, or you can type this directly here. So both are acceptable. Now in addition to that, we may also later on add some other controls next to this particular validation control, such as to check the range and so on. So basically to allow this validation control to be auto readjust in terms of the location. So basically we can actually make another change here, okay, whereby okay, now the display, initially this is static, so I'm going to change this to dynamic, meaning that when we have display equals to dynamic, okay, the control will be readjusting its position if to suit other controls. Okay, so now this is display equals to dynamic. Okay, now I'm going to just enter this so that we can see everything in one page. Okay, right, we have something like this. Now let's go to the design. Okay, you will notice that please enter the mark here. So if I am, let us test this. Okay, okay, now here, okay, we have input validation control for quiz. So if I do not enter anything here, okay, I click, okay, we don't use this calculate button, we use this temporary button. Okay, so you can see that there is an error message, please enter the mark. So if I enter something, for example, this is 1 mark, we click, okay, you will find that, okay, there's no error. Okay, we cannot use this particular calculate button that we have attached some method here, because if we do, okay, it will give an error. Okay, this is, okay, you can see that it will interrupt the execution and display some form of error message. Why? Because actually it we haven't entered any data for the other text boxes. So when they try to calculate the formula, meaning there will be some errors here. So that's why we are using the temporary button. Okay, now this is for the input, the required field validator. So we have another type of validation, meaning that now we want to set the type of data that we will accept and also the range. So what we are going to do now is that we go to the toolbox. Okay, we go to the toolbox. Now choose range validator. So now this is range validator. So what I do is that I drag and drop next to the required field validator just now. Now this is range validator. So once we have done that, go to the source. Okay, I'm going to hide the toolbox for a while. Now this is range validator. Now similarly, I'm going to rename the ID from range validator 1 to something that is shorter. Okay, for example, RV. RV is range validator, and this is for quiz. Okay, now similarly, okay, we have the error message. Okay, now I'm going to put in, okay, this one, the error message for this is quiz out of range. Okay, and the text, okay, the text for this will be okay, out of range. Okay, so this will be the text. Okay, now I'm going to actually enter this so that you can see more clearly here. Now this is the range validator. Now this is not finished, so what we can do is that similarly we can set control to validate, so we can easily copy this control to validate, okay, and we can actually put this anywhere within, okay, we can put this anywhere within the control. Okay, now we have control to validate is text txt quiz. Okay, now in addition to that, there are some other properties that we can set. Okay, now this is these properties. Okay, you can see that. Okay, the first thing that we want to set is what is the type of data that we accept in this text box. Okay, now here by default we have string. Now we do not want to put in string, so this is a double. So because we will assume that the marks entered into this text box is with decimal places, so we have a double. And in addition to that, we can set the range. So now we have the minimum value and the maximum value. So the minimum value is 0, and the maximum value for quiz is 100. So this is actually the setting that we want to add. And also with the layout, okay, the display from static we change this to dynamic. Okay, so if I am to actually go to the source, now this is the source, so I'm going to enter this so that we can see this more clearly. Okay, yes, okay, so basically we can see that we have a maximum value, we have minimum value, okay, sorry, we have minimum value, and we have the type equals to double. Okay, let us actually run this. Okay, now what we are going to do is that, okay, we are going to click the button without having we don't key in anything yet. Okay, now we have please enter the marks. Okay, now let us actually, if I am to enter something that is out of range, for example -5, okay, this is out of range, click the button, there is this message out of range. Okay, for example 105, this is also out of range. Let's say we have 75.5. okay, we click this button here. Okay, now this is acceptable. Okay, what if we enter some text ASDFGHJ? Okay, this is not numbers, so we click this one, it will also give the message out of range. So now this is what we call input validation for range, and you can see that this message has been readjusted in terms of the display. Okay, it will take this place. Okay, this is what we call the dynamic layout. Okay, let us stop this. Okay, now for the purpose of other controls, okay, it is quite easy for us to actually use this source. We can copy and paste and make the necessary changes. For example, let's say that we want to implement the same validators, okay, for the test. Okay, what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to copy both validators here, required field validator and range validator. Okay, I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste this within the text box paragraph tag. Okay, so this is okay, and once we have done that, you will notice that, okay, it becomes again the required field validator 1 and so on. So meaning that, you see, this is renamed. So what we are going to do is that we are going to rename the ID. For example, for the test, we have RFV, required field validator. We have test. Okay, the error message here is test not entered. The control to validate here is txt test. Okay, display equals to dynamic. Now please enter the mark. This is the same. Okay, for range validator, so I'm going to rename this as RV test. Control to validate is txt test. The error message is test out of range. Okay, for the maximum and minimum value, a test and quiz is the same, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it is the same. So the type is also the same. So I leave it as is. Okay, next I'm going to actually execute for the assignment. So I'm going to copy paste again the validation controls. Now for the assignment, I'm going to rename the ID as RFV assignment. The error message will be assignment not entered. The control to validate is txt assignment. Okay, display dynamic is the same. Please enter the mark is the same. Now for the range validator, this will be RV assignment. Control to validate is txt assignment. Okay. Okay, the error message is assignment out of range. Display equals dynamic. Now the minimum and maximum value, okay, the minimum value is 0. The maximum value now is 30. Okay, okay, the rest is the same. Okay, next for the project, so I'm going to do the same thing. So okay, what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to actually paste the validation controls. I'm going to rename this as FV project. Okay, the error message is project not entered. Control to validate is txt project. Okay, the rest is the same. Okay, now for the range validator, this will be renamed to to RV project. Control to validate is txt project. The error message is project out of range. For the project, the maximum value is 30. The minimum value remains 0. Okay, for lab exercise, so we are going to do the same. Okay, I'm going to paste this. Now I'm going to rename the ID. Okay, we have RFV lab exercise. The error message is lab exercise not entered. Control to validate is txt lab exercise. Okay, now in terms of the rest is the same. Okay, now I go to range validator. So range validator, I'm renaming the ID as RV lab exercise. Control to validate is txt lab exercise. So I'm going to actually, okay. The error message is lab exercise out of range, and the display remains dynamic. Now the maximum value for lab exercise is 10, so this becomes 10. The minimum value remains as 0. Okay, and lastly for the final exam, so I'm actually pasting the validators here, and I'm going to rename the ID to RFV final exam. The error message is final exam not entered. The control to validate is txt final exam. Okay, and okay, the rest is the same. Now for the range validator, this will become RV, okay, final exam. Control to validate, okay, control to validate here is txt final exam. Okay, the error message is final exam out of range. Okay, the maximum value for the final exam is 100 and the minimum value is 0. Okay, so now let's go to the design. Okay, we have something like this. Okay, now let us actually test this. Okay, so if we actually just click this button without entering anything, you can see that we have please enter the mark and so on. Okay, so if we actually enter correctly, okay, this is correct. Okay, let's say that okay, this is correct. Okay, let's say assignment, this is incorrect, meaning that let's say I choose a value that is above, for example 40. You can have out of range here. Okay, and you can see that the error message, and if we enter this correctly, for example, there's no error message here. Okay, so basically what we have done is that we have actually entered data, and once everything is correctly entered, there's no error messages, and we can either click this button, and if everything has been entered, it's okay for us to click this calculate button. Okay, so you can see that this is the values of the oral mark 45 0.17 in this particular case. Okay, and the grade is C minus. Okay, so this is one easy way for you to do input validation using the range validator and also required field validator.